and Sanitation Minister, Senator Mqunu's rubbish reports that we're facing a water crisis. Mqunu says the rains over the last few months have helped remarkably to replenish reservoirs and most dams are overflowing. The Minister earlier talking about the state of our water resources as the world marks World Water Day.
We don't have water crisis in the country at the moment. We don't have. That is referring to availability of water in the country. This is best illustrated, among other things, by the fact that during this rainy season, most of the dams in the country are overflowing. And one newspaper captured it by saying, dams are full, but taps are dry. It illustrates very clearly what's happening, so that you don't have a crisis of no water in your dams or in your rivers.
As we commemorate World Water Day, we also reflect on water infrastructure and developing a culture of water preservation. While good water management starts at home, how can municipalities encourage better water preservation habits from residents? We're joined by the Vice President of Water Globe Consultant, Dr. Gisela Kaiser. Dr. Kaiser, good evening to you and thank you for your time. The reality is that when we look at a country like South Africa, a lot of the water that leaves and, makes its way through our municipal infrastructure doesn't even reach homes or offices, because of the state in which the infrastructure is in and the leaks that we experience.
Good evening, Kathy. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yes, and you're completely right. The estimated value of non-revenue water in South Africa sits above 40% at the moment. So that includes all the water that is lost to leaks, as well as water that is produced to be of drinking quality standard, that is not billed for a variety of reasons, for example, through water theft, or perhaps that meters are old and under reading and so on. But that really means that should you provide a new water resource, that 40% of that water you're not going to be able to get revenue for. And water loss is generally a little bit lower than that, probably average in the country around 30+%. So from a utility viewpoint, municipalities of all types, it is critical that water losses and leaks are reduced.
In any municipality, water is a key driver of revenue. So when we have so much of it falling by the wayside, what does that mean again for the ability to collect some form of income from that water that has already had so much resources put into it to prepare it?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, it's quite a checkered history, I guess, that water in decades ago, even though there were still droughts, once there was a utility and a water source in a dam, dams are generally sized to provide water that's a lot more than the current population needs. So generally infrastructure was built to be quite plentiful, and water was seen as a very cheap product. So because it is consumed in volume, water is not something that people generally want to pay for. When cell phones were introduced, everybody has to pay for airtime, but water, people have a sense it falls from the sky, it should be free. So it really is a problem that so much of the water is lost or is not charged. It's very important, and very few utilities can get it right to charge for water at the right price, because it's always based on a historic price plus an increase annually, rather than going to first principles and see what the cost of water actually is. Because it's only when you are costing water correctly that people will get to learn to respect it in the right way.
We continuously see efforts from municipalities that are really sometimes in the grips of drought that encourage the collective saving of waters in their municipalities. Do you think that this is something that can be happening a lot earlier? And should we as the country, I think, again, collectively be employing some of these mechanisms, because we clearly don't have as much water as we think we do.
Absolutely, and it's also, if you are reliant on surface water as much of the country is, we may have had great rainfall in parts of the country in this year, but who's to say that for the next 5 years, rainfall won't be below average. So it is very important to develop a culture of where we value water. And at a national level, it is important to do so, and I know that the National Department of Water and Sanitation has a variety of programs to do this. But, human nature is just so flawed. It only seems to be that when there is a crisis, so when there is a regional drought in a particular town or city, that people really take this to heart and inculcate the necessary water-saving behavior. It has been shown that water demand over time bounces back. It takes approximately, I think if I recall right, about 2 to 3 years to bounce back to about 80% of prior use. And then there is a slight step change, like after the Cape Town drought. You don't anticipate that water use per person is going to increase to pre-drought levels in the next 5 or 10 years. It will really be growth that is driving that type of increase in how much water we need. What I found is that it's really difficult to get the message through at a household level, and it has to be an all-of-society approach. Often people say that the best mechanism is to go to schools and tell children the truth. Then they tend to go home and tell the story to their parents, and they're horrified if their parents are not aware of it. But it needs to happen in schools, in businesses. Businesses need to interrogate how they use water. And of course, at a household level, there are so many things, mechanisms, how you can make savings. And it is critical to learn to, when you go and buy fittings, that they are water-wise fittings to reduce your consumption and get used to habits, easy ones like reading your water meter and making sure that you don't have an underground leak and water is going to waste prior to your next water bill arriving.
Dr. Gisela Kaiser, let me thank you for your time. She's the Vice President, Water Globe Consultant.